Mr. Piles.
Hey, Rob. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. We owe our podcast listeners a little bit of a report about trading and missionary work, which for anyone coming into the podcast for the first time, it's got to sound completely odd because this is the Traders Podcast, of course.
Yes, it is.
I almost tried to find a suit and tie that I could wear and my old name badge from when I was a missionary.
I came this close to doing the suit and tie thing, too.
For those of you that listen to the podcast that don't know what we're talking about, Jason, do you want to give a little background on why we're doing this in the first place?
Well, in our previous episode, it came up. I even forget how now, but it came up that we both have served as missionaries for a period of 2 years in various parts of the world. And didn't you say, Rob, that it would be fun to do a podcast about the things that you learned and learned to do and not to do that apply to trading?
Exactly. We had a conversation the other day touching on the subject of religion and trading, which is an undercurrent in all of our listeners have fairly strong opinions about this. I would say at least 50% of our listeners would call themselves religious individuals and of all kinds of different faiths. Mm-hmm. And it brought to mind this idea that there is either a supernatural universal force watching over us and protecting us and willing to come to our defense, even in matters as small or seemingly insignificant as trading, or there is not. And of course, I think we declined to straight up come out and try to answer a religious question that's that serious. However, I thought it might be useful to at least go back and say, well, while I'm not going to take sides in religion or anything like that, it would be useful to talk about the ways that having been very religious in the past and serving a mission have affected me. And on that note, just a couple days later, after that podcast, one of our listeners wrote a message on Facebook, and I happened to be friends with him on Facebook, and he announced that his daughter was going on a mission trip to Guatemala, or I don't remember where, and he was asking for donations. And I happily donated to his daughter's mission trip. I'm not of his faith, and I just want to say to all the listeners who I know everybody wonders about this, Jason. I know. I just want to say I have an enormous amount of respect for any kind of political or religious belief that our listeners have, and I'm just grateful that our listeners are here.
Yeah,
and to preface today's episode, I want to talk about some serious lessons that have come into my trading life because of the things that I've done in a religious way. But if you're not a religious individual and you're listening to the podcast, I don't think that you should turn it off. I think you should give it a listen and give it a chance. There's no preaching that's going to go on here, and I'm certainly not interested in anybody joining any churches at all, like 0.0 churches. And for those of you that know how I feel about religion in general, I think some of the things that I'll say today are surprising. So in order to confuse as many listeners as possible, I just want to say, Jason, that I learned a ton of what makes me a good trader. I learned while knocking on people's doors in Italy. From 1990 to 1992, I served in the Italy-Rome mission for the LDS Church, and I served in Rome, in Naples, in L'Aquila, and in Cagliari, that's on the island of Sardinia, and then back in Rome. And during that time, Jason, I probably knocked on, 100,000 doors, maybe. It's so many. It's probably not countable.
That's no exaggeration. That's
probably what would you say? Would you say you knocked on tens of thousands of doors?
Yes, it's a lot because you do tons every single day. So, yeah.
Lesson number 1 was rejection. Did you face rejection?
Oh my goodness, yeah. Most of the time I was being rejected.
Yeah.
For 2 years.
Yeah, most of the time. I was spit on, I was yelled at, I was pushed, I was threatened, I was chased with a gun. A child on the subway system in Naples tried to light my pants on fire.
Whoa.
Yeah, and a woman on the subway in Naples noticed that my zipper was down, and she just was looking me straight in the eyes, Jason. She's just looking right across at me, and she just walks up to me, and I'm like, "Whoa, what is happening here?" And this young woman, without taking her eyes off of mine, she just reaches down and zips up my zipper without even ever taking her eyes off of me, and then walked away.
So every day thereafter, you had your zipper down.
Every day. That was the only day I wasn't rejected. Anyway, the first lesson that comes to mind for a trader is that came into my life from this experience was that I had to face rejection. I had to face loss and cope with it in a, I want to say, mature way. I had to learn to understand that whatever work I was doing or whatever purpose I had was more important than the rejection that I was facing. And that's a direct lesson that has come into my life and benefited me as a trader, because it may not be frequent and your win percentage may be strong, but as a trader, if you can't face a regular, constant, steady stream of losses, especially at the beginning, then you have no business doing this. And if you can't face a damaging or heartbreaking loss at some point in time when you seem to have been doing really well, then you have no business doing this either, because we have periods of euphoria, which are very similar to religious euphoria. I think trading euphoria is directly related to religious euphoria. This feeling like you've got a power behind you, you've got a system in place, you've got a way of dealing with things in the world. Everything seems to be going well. And if there's one message that comes through Western religion anyway, it's that there is opposition in all things, that you will face opposition for your beliefs, or you will face opposition to test your faith. And frankly, trading is no different. I don't know if it's a universal law, but at the times when you're doing the best, you need to be ready to face the worst.
Yes, I totally agree. Absolutely. I'm with you, Rob. Keep going. I like this. I like where you're going with this.
All right. The second thing that I learned, and there are two primary lessons that have come to mind in the past week as we've thought about this, is you can't make a decision that you care what other people think. And when you and I are walking around like total nerds and dorks in suits and name tags, and we're shaking people's hands and we're asking them if they want to, can I ask you a few questions? On that note, for the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks that I was in Italy, we would ask people, could we ask them a few questions? And said, can I have a few moments? I want to chiedere alcune domande per un breve sondaggio. I want to ask a few questions for this brief survey. And I didn't realize that what I was asking is, I would like you to ask me a few questions for a brief survey. So the first thing that people would say is, they would say, hey, how old are you? And I'd be like, wow, I'm 19. And they'd say, where are you from? And I'd say, I'm from California. And they'd say, all right, have a nice day. And then they would walk away. And I'd be like, wow, these people are really nice, but I never get to my questions. Well, it turns out that my first missionary companion didn't speak Italian very well. And I was asking for some questions. I wasn't asking some questions to them.
Oh, no.
And he argued with me about it. He was mad. Anyway, the point is that I just went back to doing it his way because it's no big deal. And I didn't really care anyway. And I looked stupid. I looked like an idiot. I looked dumb. The way I spoke, I looked dumb. The way I dressed looked dumb. My religious beliefs looked dumb. There wasn't anything about me that looked not dumb. There was everything about me that looked dumb. And I still had this feeling like I was there for a reason. I was there with a purpose. I was happy to be there. I loved being in Italy. I was never a huge fan of proselytizing. I hated it. I hated every moment of trying to change somebody's religion. But I was there I was an obedient individual, and I went because I believed that obedience was more important than my own personal beliefs at the time. And Jason, I looked stupid for 2 years, and I learned to accept myself as this outcast, or this person who looked different or spoke differently or dressed differently or had beliefs that were different. And by the end, I found comfort in being different rather than comfort in being the same. And by the time I got home, I rejected the notion that being similar was important, that fitting in was important. And as a trader, it's incredibly important that you don't choose the path of least resistance, which is to do what everybody else is doing. And there are some myths in trading that if you follow the crowd or follow the trend, that you're going to be right. The problem is that there's no real way to know what all those people think. And just like it is when you dress differently or speak differently, you don't really know what other people are ever thinking, right, Jason? That James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause symbolizes this outcast who becomes an idol of his worshipers, that this image of the outcast or the rebel is actually what people appreciate. And most people in life have this suspicion that everyone is looking at them strangely or wondering why they dress so funny. And the dirty little secret is that they're only wondering that about you if you look like you are worried about it. If you look like you don't care, and if you act like you don't care, they're grateful for someone that they can follow, and they're grateful to listen to somebody. And Jason, I don't know what you think about that, but that is a lesson that has stayed with me since the first day that I got there, that I wasn't going to get anywhere by trying to fit in, and I would just embrace my weirdness. And that has made a gigantic difference in my trading.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying there, Rob, because it's not that, someone who's well dressed in a suit, a young man in a suit is all that weird. But when people started talking to us, a lot of times they would see that their lifestyle as a, 19-year-old or whatever was different than our lifestyle as a 19-year-old. And, but you're right. Like once people saw that you had something, a conviction, something that you believed in, then they tended to admire it, actually.
And you went to Tucson, Arizona, right?
I sure did, yeah.
So it was pretty hot in the summer, and you were wearing a tie in the summer.
Yeah.
That looks pretty dumb, right?
Right, yeah. It's a very hot outfit as far as that goes.
And with respect to trading, for those of you that are listening to the podcast, the lesson for me has been not to try to figure out what all the other traders are doing, or believe that by drawing a certain number of lines on my chart, I'm going to know that, or fall for the idea that there is some way to know what everyone else is thinking and then do the same thing and make money from it. Because by the time you know what everybody else is thinking, the fad has changed, the trend has changed, the ideas are different. And what's more important in trading is having confidence in your own convictions, that you have made a decision and you have decided to stick with it. Then you're going to stay consistent and true to your decision, and you're going to work your way around whatever obstacles come in your path, but you're not going to compromise your standards or your decisions in order to look better to a group of people or to present yourself as someone who fits in with the rest of the world. And what happens when you do that as a trader is you stand by your trades longer that are going well because you're not afraid of them turning around and going badly, that you expect for things to go well. And number two, when something is going poorly, you don't necessarily panic and automatically change your system. If every time someone rejected me while I was doing missionary work, I decided to change my religion or change my beliefs or say, oh, well, you're right or whatever, then I would be completely ineffective as a missionary or just simply out of my mind. I wouldn't be able to cope with day-to-day life if I was constantly shifting my beliefs. And missionaries in your mission that were constantly deciding every day whether or not they wanted to be there. And how effective were they?
Yeah, not very.
There was a missionary who came out to the island of Sardinia. I was serving in Sardinia in 1992 in the summer. It was hot as blazes. But beautiful. It was the same location where the movie The Black Stallion was filmed, those white sandy beaches, and it was absolutely beautiful. And we weren't allowed to go to the beach, and we were still wearing the suits and whatever. But if you were going to be doing missionary work, that was a pretty damn good place to be doing it. And there was a missionary that came out who really wanted to go to South America and learn Spanish, and he was upset that he was in Italy. He was basically in what we called the power city of the mission. The greatest place to serve on the mission was, at the time, Cagliari. It was the island of Sardinia. It was in the middle of the ocean. It was stunningly beautiful. The women were beautiful. The food was amazing. The Italian was spoken clearly. and the people were friendly, and the congregations of the church were strong and big and friendly. You could just kind of let down your guard there. And I was sent out there on an emergency assignment because a missionary was having a hard time and he wanted to go home, and he was depressed all the time, and he was praying for like 9 hours a day, literally. He didn't ever want to stop for ice cream. And one of my things on my mission was I stopped for pizza and ice cream about every 5 minutes. And if I was going to be out there doing this silly work, then I was going to have a good time doing it. I wasn't going to have a bad time. I was always going to be finding a way to have fun. He was the least fun you could ever imagine. He was no fun at all. He was work. And I just decided, my mission president gave me this assignment. He told me that this is what I needed to do, that I needed to help him stay for his own benefit. And so I worked at having a good time no matter what I was doing. And that attitude got me through this 2 weeks. And I was just tortured inside at how pained and frustrated and sad he was. But I learned that I had a heart for this person who was struggling. And I think that's where this idea that I have of talking to and teaching traders who are brand new, who don't know very much, who have small account sizes, or doing the podcast for free. I think a lot of that comes from having been in Italy and seeing that. Well, anyway, he was still with it. He was trying to have a good attitude, and he was doing his best. And this other missionary comes out, and he missed his girlfriend, and he wanted to learn Spanish, and he didn't want to be in Italy, and he was in the best city in the mission, and he was still complaining about it, and it wasn't good enough for him. And it reminds me of traders who have a system that can work, but they don't like it. Well, I don't like it. I don't like it because it's early in the morning, or I don't like it because it's short-term trading, or I know it makes money, but I can't sit down in front of the charts for that long, or I don't, whatever. And it reminds me that kind of complaining about something that is really good for you, or it could have been a lot worse, and you're lucky enough to know something that works. It reminded me of how frustrating it is to watch somebody have something at their disposal that can work for them, that can be good for them, that can help them be successful, and they walk away from it because it's not the way that they imagined it in their mind. And this happens with traders all the time. It happens in relationships too. It's like, well, I didn't imagine that she would be 10 pounds overweight or whatever. And people just all the time throw away what is right for them because they can't handle the goodness. They can't handle the good situation because then they're committed, and then they know that they owe something to the universe for having given them this gift. So I told this guy, I said, listen, you are eventually going to get sent to the most terrible city in the mission if you have this attitude. There are missionaries serving in these places where people are angry all the time, or it's cold, or it's frustrating, or whatever, and you're going to get sent to one of those places because I don't care anyway. Well, 2 weeks into my stay in Sardinia, I lost my companion that was struggling. He was doing a little bit better, and then the mission president called up, and he asked me to be the zone leader or whatever, the leader over the missionaries in one half of the island. And he said, where do you think the missionaries should go? What do you think should be going on here? And I said, I think you should transfer this guy out of the city. And I said, so I think he's not appreciating this. Somebody else will appreciate being here. So he sent him to the farthest regions of the mission. That day, he was gone. He was gone. He was totally gone. And one more story about that guy. He had brought with him on his mission a giant jar full of M&M candies, and his girlfriend had given him this jar. Do you know how this jar works?
Where you take out one a day. Yeah. It's a countdown, right?
Yeah, it's a countdown. So every day that he was in the mission, he would eat one M&M candy, and that would count down the days in his mission. His true love and him could be together again or whatever.
I see where this is going, Rob Booker. I know what you're going to say.
So he comes home one day with his companion, and everybody in the apartment has this jar of M&Ms out, and we're just eating these M&Ms right in front of him when he comes home. And we're just eating them, and he just starts screaming and crying, and the jar only has like 10 M&Ms left, and we're like, looks like you're going home.
Yeah, that's right.
And I just want to say that if you're not willing to accept the sweet and wonderful things in your life, and you're not willing to accept success and fully embrace it as your birthright, that you deserve to have success, then someone else will enjoy that for you. If your life is a constant struggle by your decision, And trading is a massive struggle and hard work, and you just can't make it work, or can't seem to work, or it doesn't work for you, or every time blah blah blah, then you will get that. If you turn life into something that is beautiful and substantially awesome for you, no matter what happens to you, you have a constant quiet reassurance that things are going to work out for you, and that things generally go your way. And despite any temporary setbacks, that good things generally happen to you. That's the kind of attitude that keeps a trader on for more than 12 months, trading a $1,000 account until the light bulb goes on and they say, oh, so that's how it works. And then gives them the confidence to pull the trigger on a larger trade size, and gives them the steadfastness to not switch that around and sabotage it. So that when a day comes along and there is no trade setup, so you just turn off the computer and you walk away because it's not worth it. Those kinds of experiences that I had shaped me as an individual in a way that when I was 19 and I left, I was a wimp. I was a complete nerd. I wasn't very social. I was not very consistent. I worried about what other people thought of me. I didn't have a giant amount of friends. I'd had no experience with girls. I had absolutely no confidence in any area of my life, of any concept, none, Jason. And that experience was difficult and tough. And I sort of just embraced that experience. And it's kind of easier to do when you're in Italy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of a great place to be. But what about you? I mean, has your podcasting career been affected by those experiences that you had?
Yeah, I had two quick things I wanted to tell you. I thought you'd appreciate, Rob, in this context here. First of all, the funniest thing that anybody ever said to me on a mission, I walked up, we were doing that thing where we were knocking on doors, and some guy was in his garage working on his car, and he said, boys, I'll tell you right now, I'm a drinker, I'm a sinner, and I love the world. And I died laughing. That was the funniest thing. And I that has no real correlation here, but that was my favorite thing somebody said. But no, one of the most important things I learned was first things first is kind of a concept here. I was in Arizona, as you said, and you know from experience how hot it can be. And someone had left their dog outside. They had this black dog, and it knocked over its water, and it was tangled in its chain. And by the time we found this dog, it was suffering and dying from heat or whatever. Long story short, we gave it water, and then we were trying to give it shelter and shade and all kinds of other things until the owner got home. And the dog ended up dying, sadly, even though we tried really hard. But it's like, man, if that dog had had extra water, or if it had had that water in time, then it would have made it. And all the other things we tried to do, like the shade and stuff, I mean, I don't know how much that helped, because you have to take care of the necessities first, or nothing else matters. And so I was trying to think of a trading parallel here, and I just think that there must be, as traders, there must be things that are absolutely mandatory that you got to get squared away first before you can do the other stuff. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think you have to have an internal commitment, a law written in your heart about risk management, probably, that just states for the record what it is that you're willing to lose and how far you're willing to go, and when you cut it off. And once I don't know if there's anything more important than that. Once you get that down, everything else becomes so much easier, because you're not in a constant, it's not gambling anymore. You don't wonder how much you might make or how much you might lose. And when you square those away and those decisions are made, a lot of what is fun about trading at the beginning is no longer fun. And then there's a whole other universe waiting for you of enjoyment that most people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
When we come back in the next episode, I was thinking that we might take a verse of scripture or a thought or a saying from some of the major faiths around the world, Jason, and state how those things, and every religion has its own opinion or has statements about business or money or the love of money or the pursuit of money. And I thought we might share some of those thoughts with the listeners and discuss how those apply, because we have listeners of all kinds of different faiths, including, I'm sure, atheists and agnostics and Satanists and witches and who knows what else.
Right. Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting.
If someone has a thought about this episode, Mr. Piles, the producer, how might they go about letting us know?
Well, they can either email us at producer@traderspodcast.com, or they can just leave a little comment there in the show notes for this episode.
We sure as heck love you, podcast listeners. Have a wonderful day. Good luck in your trading. I'm Rob Booker. On behalf of Jason, the producer, you're listening to the Traders Podcast. Well, that was a lot of fun.
It was. On that M&M story, you know what I thought you were going to say you did? I thought that you were going to say every once in a while you'd sneak a few of them so his count would be off. So it would be a thing that he discovered later, you know.
If I could go back in time. Oh, my gosh.
That sounds like fun.
Hey, did you see X-Men?
Yeah.
I liked X-Men.
We
talked about that briefly. Did you see Godzilla?
Yes.
What did you think?
I didn't love it, but it was
I didn't
okay.
love it either.
But do not see A Million Ways to Die in the West. It's terrible.
No, I just saw it last night. It's fantastic.
I hated that movie. Why did you like it, Rob?
I loved it. Okay, first of all, there's this scene where he goes, "Take your hat off, boy. That's $1 bill." And I just died laughing. I was laughing out loud in the movie theater. Not a lot of people were laughing in the movie.
Oh no! In my theater, it was pretty silent, but it wasn't just because I was in Utah. Like, my friend saw it in California. He saw it at the ArcLight, in fact, and he said it was like crickets in there in his theater. But I don't know. I'm not into Seth MacFarlane humor. Do you like Seth MacFarlane?
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought there were moments in that movie that were really, really funny. Like just a few moments that were really, really hilarious.
I laughed twice, I think, but yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for this weekend. Edge of Tomorrow is getting great reviews. It's supposed to be really good.
Yeah, that's Groundhog Day mixed with Oblivion.
That is brilliant. I'm going to quote you on that, Rob.
I bet that's how it was pitched. I bet you that's how it was pitched in Hollywood.
I love that. That is really good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to see that for sure. What else?
Let me see. And then you got stupid Transformers in a couple weeks, but I can't help it. It just cracks me up. Have you seen the trailer for Transformers?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, when Mark Wahlberg says, "I think it's a Transformer."
I think it's a Transformer. I thought that was from Ted. I thought that was like a scene from Ted. Did you see Ted?
Yes, I did. And I like that even less than A Million Days to Die in the West, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I'm going to see Transformers. I'm going to see Edge of Tomorrow. I want to see Chef, Jon Favreau.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too.
Yeah, I'd like to see that movie. And then I can't wait to see Interstellar. I watch that preview once a day.
Yeah, I'm pumped for that as well.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that movie. So anyway.
Yeah.
All right, Mr.
Well, that was
Piles.
really fun. So we're going to do it tomorrow? Do you want... So you're going to...
I think tomorrow works great. Yeah, let's get it done.
Do you need me to look up anything for you? Or are you
No,
just,
I got it. I got a few ready to go. If you want to look anything up, you can. That'd be great.
Okay, that's awesome.
All right, man. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, Rob. Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.